Well, welcome to another Friday night. We've been working our way through a series on anger. And what I want to look at today is anger looks different depending on what vagal state that you're in. So if you're in your ventral vagal state or your sympathetic vagal state or your dorsal vagal state. And so I really want to just kind of explain those so that you can begin to identify that what state am I in? Because if you're in your ventral vagal state, then anger can be healthy. But when you're in your sympathetic or dorsal, anger's not going to be healthy and it's not going to lead to good things. So if you're able to identify what vagal state you're in, then you're able to go, okay, don't let anger come out right now. I got to get back to a ventral vagal state and then figure out kind of what to do here. So that's part one. Then part two, I want to look at kind of a unique thing that can happen with many people where they rapidly can switch between two states. So let's begin by looking at the three different states and what anger looks at. So in your ventral vagal state, when you're in that safe, connected, regulated place where you're able to experience all your emotions and be totally human, that's where anger is controlled. There's a purpose for your anger. You can say, hey, this is because love has been violated. I don't feel safe. And you're able to express that anger in a loving way without hurting other people, without becoming aggressive. And then you're able to stay connected to the other person. Whereas in your other vagal states, when you're angry, you disconnect. You don't want to connect. You want to hurt the other person. And then in your ventral vagal, you stay connected and then you can calm down quickly and get regulated quickly again after the anger outburst. So what I want you to hear from this is that this is when anger is healthy. We need to be able to express anger in this state. For most people from complex trauma, the only time they've expressed anger is when they're in their sympathetic state. And so it's going to take a while to learn how to express anger in your ventral vagal state, and that it's okay to express anger in your ventral vagal state. Because when they've been in their sympathetic state, every time they've expressed anger, it's hurt someone, something bad has happened. And so they begin to think, if I express anger in my ventral vagal state, something bad will happen, will hurt somebody. No, this is where you learn to express it in ways that are actually helpful, that actually bring about good results. So just some typical behaviors when you're in ventral vagal state is you remain calm, but you're firm and assertive in your communication. So you're able to say, hey, that upset me. Here's why. I need this to change. I need this for myself. So you're able to be assertive and firm, but you're also able to listen. You're also able to repair the conflict. That's so important. So again, this is where anger's designed to function in a healthy way. It leads to repair. It motivates you to get things back to safe, to get things back to loving. But let's go to your sympathetic state. What's anger look like when you're in your sympathetic state? Well, this is when you're now in survival mode. This is now when you feel threatened and in danger. So anger now is aggressive. Anger's fueled by cortisol and adrenaline. Anger causes you then to become reactive, impulsive, to go black and white in your thinking. It's harder for you to regulate your emotions, your tone, your reactions. Everything gets amped up. And so typical behaviors are, now this is when you can go to yelling and screaming and snapping. This is where you can interrupt people all the time and argue aggressively. And this is where you now get to be hurtful and lash out in your statements and say disrespectful, insulting things. This is now where there's so much anger now in you because you're in fight or flight mode that you can't sit still. You're restless. You're pacing. You're clenching. And this is where now in survival mode, I got to win or I lose. There's no repair. It's win or lose. And so I must win. I must dominate. That is a totally different perspective. That's a totally different way of approaching anger, and that's why it does so much anger. So the purpose of anger is not repair. The purpose of anger is survival, defeating the other person so I'm not defeated. Very, very different. And then what about the dorsal vagal? What does anger look like there? So that's where you're shutting her down. You're trying to hold it in. You're suppressing it. Some people turn it in on themselves. Some people just go to numbness, catatonic, but they feel a deep sense of hopelessness. They feel totally withdrawn and disconnected from the world. And so instead of turning it outward, it turns inward, or it just goes to this very numbness. And so that's where people can just go to shutdown, silent treatment. You try to get them to talk and there's nothing. They've just withdrawn emotionally. Or they go to blaming themselves, shaming themselves, hating themselves. It's very much an internal thing that's going on. And then the whole purpose of what is happening here is they're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to conserve energy and keep themselves from losing it, from becoming overwhelmed by it, where they would just explode. And so it's their way of trying to get safety, trying to keep themselves under control. So that's the three states. But I want to talk about this common occurrence that happens. So typically what would happen is you would be in your ventral vagal state, and then you would go to your sympathetic, or you'd go to your dorsal. Okay? So once you're starting to repair all that, let's say you were in your dorsal, you would then go back to your ventral vagal, and then you might go to your sympathetic. But there would be this transition that would move between the states, but the ventral vagal would be part of that. What happens for many people in complex trauma is that they go from dorsal vagal, where they're shut down, they're holding it together, they're not responding, they look calm, they're withdrawn, and then all of a sudden they go to sympathetic. They bypass going through the ventral vagal. There's just this sudden switch where now all of a sudden they go from total immobilization to aggressive mobilization, and they just lose it. So here, let me just see if I can develop that for you. So in that dorsal vagal state, you are feeling numb, hopeless, disconnected, frozen, unable to defend yourself. You're just taking it. So fight and flight haven't worked. You've just shut her down. And now you're just trying to keep yourself from feeling the hurt and the ongoing attacks against you. But what I want you to understand is, doesn't mean sympathetic is no longer available to you at all. That energy to survive through sympathetic doesn't just disappear. You've just turned it off. You've shut it down for a while. You are repressing the impulses of anger and frustration and defensiveness and lashing out. You're repressing all of that in your dorsal vagal, but it's still there. So what can happen is, as soon as your brain sees an opportunity, it detects a possible exit out of this shutdown place where it can take some power back. It can defend itself. It can take care of itself. It rapidly mobilizes and switches to the sympathetic state. And so what can trigger that is you can get cornered to such a point where you realize, if I don't act now, I am going to get decimated. I'm going to get killed. So I've been pushed. I've taken it. I can't take it anymore. And so you can get that with somebody just pushing your emotional boundaries, where you take it, and all of a sudden you snap. Or pushing your physical boundaries, all of a sudden you snap. So it's a girl on a date where she puts up with this guy pushing her boundaries, flirting, doing inappropriate stuff. She takes it, and then finally he starts to try to rape her and she snaps. So that can also happen where you just gradually, stress takes its toll. You take it. Resentment builds. It takes its toll until you snap. Or you're with somebody that's been pushing and all of a sudden you spot a weakness in them, an opportunity to lash back, to defend yourself, and you take advantage of that. So your nervous system, that's been all of its energy is to keep you immobilized, to keep you from reacting, now basically says, we've got to act. Here's the opportunity. We got to do it. And it switches in this abrupt, intense way. So somebody that's just sat there during an argument, hasn't said a word, they've just taken it, all of a sudden they lose it. And they get red-faced and screaming and violent against the other person. Or somebody in a relationship that has just taken neglect for months, kind of sexual inappropriate stuff for months. They just take it, and then one day they are not going to take it anymore, and they lose it. Or somebody who just keeps keeping the peace, withdrawing from conflict, sweeping stuff under the rug. And they do that for months and even years, and then one day they snap and they get confrontational and they get in your face. So it's your nervous system does this massive flip-flop, is what I want you to see. And so it goes like they have no anger till anger is out of control. And so that can happen. So again, it's bypassing the ventral vagal state. It is saying, no, we're not going back to ventral vagal to try to repair. We're still in survival mode, but the old survival tactic is no longer working. We got to switch to the other survival state in order to try to survive. So sadly, what happens is, so you go from dorsal vagal to sympathetic state, then afterwards you feel guilty. And so instead of going to ventral vagal to repair, you just go back to dorsal. And you go back to shutdown. And now you just shut down even more. Now you try to repress even more. So that can happen for so many people. So one way kind of to picture what's happening is I remember as a kid, we had pressure cookers. And so you had this little cap you put on this little wee spout, like a little chimney that you put a cap on so that the pressure gradually built inside. And then you organized the cap so that it let a bit of steam out, but it kept the pressure at a certain level. So what you can picture in a person that's in a dorsal vagal state is they got the lid on, but pressure is building. And they don't have an opportunity to let a little bit of steam out. It just builds and builds till the cap explodes. And then afterwards, they just feel so terrible about it. They put the cap back on and they find ways to try to hold it on even firmer. So that is kind of what can happen with anger in your vagus system. And so I hope that helps you. I hope it helps you understand some of the internal dynamics of what is going on and when your anger is actually coming from a good place and when it's coming from a potentially harmful place. So again, hope this is helpful. If it is, please like, subscribe, share, make a comment. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.